Greetings of peace from Student Affairs Center. I am your Dean of Students, Homer C. Balmes, and once again welcome you to a new episode offering of Clinician Knows 2022. Clinician Knows are well-curated student support video-based content and webinar discussion and sharing about different topics intended for various stakeholders in the university. For this morning, our key theme is about home and workplace safety and awareness. We invited a very distinguished alumni to share about a talk entitled Introduction to Hazardous Materials, Guide for Home and Workplace Safety. Our speaker is a registered nurse and a fire inspector. She is an alumni of St. Luke's College of Nursing Batch 2007, Centenniales, currently serving as the CBRN Action Officer, Bureau of Fire Protection National Headquarters. Let us learn and enjoy listening to Fire Inspector Gladys H. Areco.
Good morning to all our participants who are tuned in right now, who's listening for my session. So my session is entitled Introduction to Hazardous Materials, a guide for home and workplace safety. So before I proceed with my discussion with you this morning, allow me to first introduce myself. So I am Fire Inspector Gladys H. Areco. I am from the Bureau of Fire Protection. So I am a graduate of Trinity University of Asia, St. Luke's College of Nursing, batch 2007. So I am from batch Centenniales. So in 2009, I entered the fire service, and ever since I worked sa fire service ng Bureau of Fire Protection, I became engaged with hazardous material safety and CBRN response. So later on, I will tell you more about it. The main goal of my session with you this morning is first to let you know and familiarize yourself with the different government agencies that are actually involved in incidents like this, kasi many are not actually aware of the services provided by the Bureau of Fire Protection in our country. So some people think that the BFP are into dousing fires or fire suppression, no? So medyo yun yung kilala na trabaho na binibigay ng Bureau of Fire Protection. But in reality, the very multidiscipline services provided by the Bureau of Fire Protection actually includes not only our fire suppression duties, but also we provide emergency medical services, so pre-hospital care and ambulance. No, your fire service have ambulances, and we have the technical rescue services, which is the special rescue unit, the unit that I was part for almost 11 years of my career prior to my current assignment as the CBRN, or the Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear Action Officer here at the BFP National Headquarters. So what the technical rescue arm of the BFP does is pag may mga vehicular accidents, pagka merong mga collapse structure, disaster response, and the hazardous material incidents, which I will be discussing with you this morning, are part of the services na ginagampanan po ng ating Bureau of Fire Protection. So, kaparehas po ng ating kapulisan at ating armed forces and even the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, kami po ay magkakasama sa law enforcement services side po ng ating government. There are other uniform agencies, but BFP, BGMP, and the Philippine National Police are the so-called Tri-Bureau under the Department of Interior and Local Government. So much introduction about myself and what I do. So let me begin my discussion with you this morning. So allow me to share my screen. So again, the title of this session is Introduction to Hazardous Materials, a guide for home and workplace safety. Again, I am Fire Inspector Gladys H. Areco, the CBRN Action Officer here at the BFP National Headquarters. I am a graduate of Trinity University of Asia St. Louis College of Nursing, batch 2007. So first, um, let me ask the question, what is hazardous materials, or abbreviated or commonly known as hazmat? Siguro most of you would get yung literal translation into the English language of what hazardous material is, but there is a definition of what is hazardous materials. Pero it's pretty straightforward, no? Kung anong English definition niya. But according to the globalized harmonized system, ang ibig sabihin ng hazardous material is any substance, be it solid, liquid, or gas, which is capable of causing harm to people, property, and the environment. So, pag tiningnan natin, parang masama yung hazardous materials because it's hazardous, but in reality, it's not. Because these hazardous materials are also called as toxic industrial chemicals are actually useful in so many ways kasi ginagamit sila sa manufacturing, ginagamit ito sa mga industries. They are potential substances that can cause harm, but they are not necessarily harmful if they are used the way they are intended to be. So, maraming types of chemicals na na-encounter natin both sa bahay at sa workplace. We have this common household chemicals, our bleach, fabric conditioner, shampoo, soap, all of this are actually hazardous materials. Pero they are in a certain level that are allowable to be used safely ng mga consumers. So chemicals have certain levels where they are not harmful and certain ways when they are handled na hindi sila nakakasama. But when they are mishandled or there is misuse for chemicals, doon nagkakaroon ng problema. So why I'm talking about you regarding hazardous materials is because, like I said nga, ito yung isa sa services na hindi masyadong nalalaman ng publiko. Not many of the people are actually aware that hazardous material mitigation efforts are actually done by the Bureau of Fire Protection and even other agencies, no, with the primarily goal of preventing its theft, misuse, and diversion. Just a little background on hazardous materials. Actually, way back during the early World War era, if you've heard or if you've seen in the movies or probably read in books, the use of chemical weapons. So, they can actually be weaponized. Pwedeng magamit ang mga chemicals na to, even the common household substances. Later on, we will talk more about that, especially if you've seen sa news yung isang incident that happened in the States wherein a wife allegedly was poisoning the husband by putting some, if I'm not mistaken, a drainage cleaning agent sa kanyang lemonade. So again, hazardous materials are not really bad per se because they have their purpose, but when they are misused or they are mishandled, they can definitely cause harm to people. And we are going to talk about it this morning kung paano natin maiiwasan na mangyari yun. So moving on, the dangers of hazardous materials for accidents and misuse. So like I said, it has been used in the past, it has been used in the war, the use of chemical weapons, the use of different substances to cause harm to people have been recorded. And as part of the services given by BFP, yun yung gusto naming ma-prevent by giving and providing the proper storage, handling of these chemicals so they do not cause harm to people. So the chemicals and other dangerous goods have caused harm to people both accidentally and intentionally. So pwede naman kasi na sa isang factory nagkaroon ng leak and unfortunately it's around or near a residential area and people in the immediate area got affected of the substances. Or pwede din naman na hindi sa ganong scale, pwede naman din within our homes na na-ingest ng if meron tayong bata na kasama sa bahay or natapunan ng asido or any other chemicals na mishandle both in a small scale in a home environment with our basic household chemicals or pwedeng in a larger scale, pwedeng isang tanker na may lamang chemical na tumagilid sa EDSA or isang container na nagkaroon ng leak or pwede din siyang intentionally. Pwede din ginamit yung substance na yon para makapanakit or eventually pwede din nga siyang gamitin para makapatay ng ibang tao or makasakit ng ating kapwa. So first, let's talk about a example of one of the worst chemical disasters in the world. So this happened in Bhopal, India on December 3, 1984, and to date, it's still one of the worst recorded chemical disasters that happened in our history. So the chemical accident happened on the night of December 2, 1984. So in a nutshell, ano ba tong Bhopal incident na to that happened in India? So this incident actually affected over 500,000 people who were exposed to the methyl isocyanate gas. Ano ba yung methyl isocyanate gas? No? So methyl isocyanate gas is one of the ingredients used in doing or producing pesticide. So yung pinakasikat na brands that we have here in the Philippines is Baygon. No, so it's a household chemical that we use for insects and roaches na nasa bahay. So imagine the scale of a factory producing pesticide that eventually had a leak and yung pesticide na yon is imbes na ma-process siya to be used kasi wala naman actually harm into producing pesticides because pesticides have its agricultural purposes. But then again, the danger is when it is mishandled or not proper maintenance is given to the facilities that are producing this, it could really lead to severe disasters that could affect a lot of people in a scale that is so unimaginable. No, I cannot imagine a similar incident happening in the Philippines kasi napakahirap no. There were noted incidents of chemical disasters. No, if you've heard of the ammonia explosion na nangyari sa isang ice factory in Navotas, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe Malabon, somewhere in that district that happened. So because of certain mishaps that could have been prevented or that could have been done to mitigate the accident in the workplace. So in the workplace, there are certain layers of safety na kailangan sundin para ma-prevent na hindi to mangyari. But for for a reason, one way or another, things ended up like this. So eventually, in this specific example that I'm talking about with you right now, thousands of people died following the incident. So primary causes of death were choking, circulatory collapse, and pulmonary edema. So imagine niyo naman kung anong magiging itsura ng isang cockroach na nasasprayan ng Baygon or ng exposed to a lot of people. So imagine the magnitude of impact that it can cause to health, not only to health, but to the livelihood and economy of that specific area. So let's go a little more specific naman, no, sa so this is parang a large scale hazardous material incident, which is accidental. Let's talk about naman yung mga incidents of poisoning and incidents of chemical mishandling sa ating mga bahay and even sa offices. So another example that came into my mind is you've probably heard of several instances wherein merong mga sinasabuyan ng muriatic acid, for one way or another, whatever their motives are, binubuhusan nila yung ng asido yung kaaway nila, or it could also be an accident or trip lang, but there have been cases and reported over the news for so many years here in the Philippines of incidents regarding sa mga ganon the use of chemicals to harm other people. And I'm sharing with you one of the charts I got from a published study from the National Poison Management Center regarding the top 10 most common poisons affecting or mga cases lodged dito sa Philippines. No? So, the highest cause of poisoning is yung mga caustics daw. So, what are examples of caustics? Examples of caustics are our household bleach. So siguro nakarinig na kayo because I remember when I was still a student, I have heard and I have seen patients who are trying to commit suicide by ingesting bleach, no? Whatever drives them to do that, is very sad, but it's one of the leading according to this data, one of the leading causes of poisoning in our country. The next is poisoning through hydrocarbons, no? So example of hydrocarbons are kerosene, butane. So people also somehow end up ingesting this for some reason na hindi din natin maipaliwanag, or kung ano man ang nagte-trigger sa kanila for them to do this. Then also alcohol, not just isopropyl alcohol, but if you've heard the news of the lambanog poisoning, which is actually a form also of alcohol, but a different kind of alcohol, not conducive for as food, or hindi siya intended na mainom. Also cited here are other examples like silver jewelry cleaner, paracetamol, pesticides, more commonly is yung mga organophosphates. Probably most of you, hindi ko alam kung buhay na kayo during the time na uso yung pinapalabas sa TV about maalaala mo kaya, and there are some letter senders na there was I remember one particular story about a parent intentionally poisoning the children with pesticides because of extreme poverty. And then iron, salicylates, and elemental mercury and mefenamic acid. So this also includes incidents perhaps of intentional overdose. So again, these chemicals, the caustics, the hydrocarbons, the alcohol, they're not inherently bad. They have a purpose. But again, like yung paulit-ulit kong sinasabi, when it is mishandled and if it's not used in the proper purpose na dapat gamitin sila, then it becomes a problem. So now, who are the first responders during hazmat incidents, no, or hazardous material cases like this? So it's dalawa ang major category of who serves as the first responders in incidents like this. So the law enforcement agencies and of course our medical and health allied facilities. So like I said, kaya ko to again sinishare is because for us to have a knowledge na ang fire services natin ay hindi lang pamatay sunog, no? We also have other services like this. So first, among the law enforcement agencies, ito yung mga agencies na yon. So we have the Bureau of Fire Protection, which is my agency. We also have the Hazardous Material Team, or the CBRN team rather, of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Philippine National Police. So CBRN stands for Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear emergencies. So ang bridge or the overlap area of hazmat and CBRN is hazmat refers to accidental incidents involving chemicals. Now, kapag ginamit na yon, yung chemical na yon para makasakit or makapatay ng tao, then it becomes a security concern which is within the purview of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Philippine National Police. So, yung mga kagaya ng nabanggit ko kanina, yung mga tao na nanaboy ng muriatic acid or people who have attempt to sabotage or whatever ill intent over a chemical facility, all of those are within the purview of the police and the armed forces of the Philippines. Now, when it's routine accidents ng mga leaks, mga spills, yun po ang ginagampanan ng Bureau of Fire Protection. So, pagdating naman po sa medical and health allied facilities, of course, ang ating lead department or lead agency po is the Department of Health. So, the Department of Health, through the National Poison Management and Control Center, which is situated at the Philippine General Hospital, sila ang nagmamanage ng treatment for the cases of poisoning in the Philippines. So, the National Poison Management and Control Center has established different poison centers across the country, and our physicians who are toxicologists are in a network, no, to manage the incidents and cases of poisoning in our country. So sila yung tumutugon kung paano iti-treat and kung paano i-manage yung ating mga patients who are unfortunately either accidentally or intentionally ingesting or let's say using these chemicals to harm themselves or to harm others. So, in a nutshell, paano ba ginagawa ng Bureau of Fire yung incidents just in case magkaroon ng malaking hazmat spill or hazmat leak sa isang factory, for example. So first, we control the site. We do that in partnership with the local government units, the barangay officials, and the Philippine National Police, of course. After that, we do recon or reconnaissance, or reconnaissance or other term for assessment. We assess the area if there are people that needs to be rescued, or there is an active spill na kailangang i-manage or i-patch, or whatever intervention is necessary has to be reconned or assessed first, no? And then after that is the extrication. So extrication is our term for removing victims or individuals from an area that is unsafe to a place of safety. After nun is we decontaminate. No, we try to remove. Itong picture na nakikita nyo is one of the very tedious and methodical decontamination process done by the fire department in cases of hazardous materials spill. And then finally is the detection and sampling. So we will try to get a sample of the material, then submit for laboratory for whatever investigation necessary to find out what happened. So basically, all those things that I said gives you a picture of the different key players or stakeholders in the hazardous material uh, field here in the Philippines. So meron tayong law enforcement, meron tayong medical side, and whether intentionally or accidentally, or whether small scale lang siya of poisoning, or small scale in such a way na sa office or sa bahay lang siya, or major incidents kung involving facilities. No, we have a different concerned government agencies who are providing response services to manage this. So now that I have told you regarding my agency and the other agencies involved in hazardous materials, let's now talk about how are going to prevent this in a small scale, no? In our capacity as citizens of this country, as individuals, no? What are the things that we can actually do in order to prevent uh, hazardous material incidents in our home, in our office? So our cardinal rule as responders is always safety first, no? So for those who are listening who are already employed, I'm sure especially those in the industries and in health professions, no, you know this by heart, that we always uphold safety of our staff, safety of our employees, and there are different provisions of the law from the occupational safety and health, from the guidelines of the Department of Labor and Employment, and even the safety of the students, prescribed by the Commission on Higher Education and the DepEd. So there are layers of policies that try to ensure the safety of our citizens, both in the workplace and in whatever institution you are part. But like I always say when I'm giving out lectures, is safety is a two-way road. No, it's a mutual responsibility between the individual himself and the institution. No, kahit anong provision of safety your workplace is giving you, if you're not following it, then it's not gonna work. And even if you as an individual is committed to safety, but your organization is not providing you the right tools and resources, for example, provision of right PPE, personal protective equipment, right resources, then it's not also gonna work. So like I said, safety is a mutual responsibility. So now, the first guideline or the first tip that I will share with you is the right PPE or the right personal protective equipment for the right job. So here you would see a photo of us in a chemical suit. This was taken in a simulation exercise we had with the Armed Forces of the Philippines under a project that we did on enhancing our interagency cooperation. And then in the middle, you would see a normal gloves, no? Yung laundry gloves na nabibili natin sa supermarket, and the goggles or the eye protection. So if I would ask you, how many of you actually uses this chemical gloves, no? Kapag gumagamit tayo ng bleach when we're cleaning our toilet and bath sa bahay, if we're handling liquid sosa when we're trying to clear out our drainage, how many of you actually spare some amount of money to buy this? Kasi in my experience, although ay hindi ko naman nilalahat, no, not very many are especially sa home, no, are inclined into using this personal protective equipment, especially the eye protection. Pero lagi ko nga namin sinasabi as safety practitioner, hindi ka basta-basta makakabili ng additional na daliri, and all the more hindi ka basta-basta makakabili ng pamalit sa mata mo. But this personal protective equipment are very cheap and it's not going to take you over 30 seconds to put on. But for some reason, hindi tayo masyadong uh, sanay na gumamit ng personal protective equipment, especially pag nasa bahay lang. So, parang nakikita natin na pag nag-handle nito, masyado namang maselan, but no, every time we're handling chemicals like this, dapat we always try to protect ourselves and uh, use this equipment to ensure our safety. So if you'd see dito sa poster ng The Simpsons, the risk is greater if you wear the wrong respirator. So parang example lang dito is yun nga the right personal protective equipment for the right job. Kasi you want to protect yourself, no? The damage it can cause to you may not be immediate, but in the long run, yung exposure mo can actually lead you into developing certain diseases in the future na could have been prevented if you are only using the right personal protective equipment for the right job. And if we talk in the context of workplace, minsan tinatamad na tayong gamitin yung PPE. If you're kunyari in the industry, in the factory, yung medyo nakakailang na suot yung gloves, nakakailang na suotin yung apron. So these things are set for a reason. They are provided for a reason, and that's for us to ensure our safety. So my first guideline or my first tip for you, for everyone, is to embrace the use of personal protective equipment because it's very, very important. You cannot readily buy mapalitan yung daliri mo or mapalitan yung mata mo or certain damages that it can bring to your health is irreversible. So care for yourself enough to wear and follow the use of proper personal protective equipment, be it in your own home or at your workplace. Next naman is only buy and store the amount that you need. No? So if we're talking about chemicals, you'd see the picture I used here sa slide is on the right side of the screen is hoarding chemicals. No? So let's talk sa household level. We are not supposed to buy so many household chemicals and then pinagsasama-sama natin siya na hindi na maayos, na hindi nakatakip ng maayos, tapos nakalagay siya sa cabinet na kulob na walang proper ventilation. So there are certain prescriptions to the proper storage ng mga chemicals na to. And then again, the amount that you need. Kasi God forbid, kung may mangyari sa bahay nyo, especially kung magkaroon ng sunog, this is very dangerous because most of these household chemicals are highly combustible. So they will even aggravate the fire if just in case it happens. And then chances are also during earthquakes. So, kag nagkaroon ng earthquake, yung mga matatapon sa ilalim ng lababo, kung may muriatic acid ka dyan. So, imagine if you have that big gallon of muriatic acid, tapos hindi pa pala nakatakip ng maayos, and then nagkaroon ng earthquakes, or our tendency is to hide under the table, and then all of a sudden, muriatic acid started seeping out of your kitchen, under sink kitchen cabinet. So, there are there are proper ways of storing this, and hindi talaga dapat mag-hoard the amount of chemicals that you need. So our advice sa bahay is normally the amount that you can use within 2 weeks, maximum to a month. So kung binibili nyo is good for 6 months or good for 1 year, medyo nakakatakot yun kasi masyado siyang marami. And it's not advisable to store so much chemicals in your house Especially may iba na kakatapos lang magpapintura ng bahay, so may mga natirang pintura, lagay sa ilalim ng cabinet. Then meron ding maraming bleach, lagay din sa ilalim ng cabinet. So these things are dangerous. They form fumes and they can cause serious harm, lalo na kapag napaglaruan ng mga bata or natapon or whatever, something that happens to them. So hindi talaga dapat mag-store at bumili ng sobra-sobra daming household chemicals. No? Something that you could use within the month is generally what I can tell you based on my personal experience. Now, if we put this in the context of workplace and industries, the Fire Code of the Philippines prescribes limitations and even other agencies on the number of chemicals that can be stored in factories. No? So, hindi po unli ang pagsusstore ng mga chemicals because again, it goes back to what I said kanina. Pag nagkaroon ng sunog or ng sakuna, it would definitely aggravate the conflagration or the severity of fire, depende dun sa gaano karaming storage. So the Fire Code of the Philippines has some regulatory mechanisms on regarding the allowable quantities of chemicals that must be stored in certain facilities in order to ensure the safety. Although I would admit it's not 100% compliance. There are really some industries na medyo matigas ang ulo, but in the context of putting layers of regulation para sundin sila, those are in place. So like I said kanina, it's a mutual responsibility. It's the responsibility of the entity and the responsibility also of the concerned law enforcement agency para ma-achieve natin yung chemical safety, both for the industry or for the business itself and for the immediate community. So dalawa na tayo. So first, the right PPE for the right job. Second is wag mag-hoard. Buy and store the amount that you need in the household, normally what you can consume in a month. In the workplace or in the industries, follow the provisions of the Fire Code of the Philippines regarding maximum allowable quantities and the appropriate kind of storage para i-store yung mga ano na yun. So, one thing more before I forget, no, sa bahay may iba na medyo mahilig mag recycle ng container. I remember this incident, very quick lang, allow me to share to you, no? Meron kaming nagkaroong response this happened in Bohol. Nagkaroon ng malakas na earthquake in Bohol back in 2009 or 10, I can't remember, I cannot remember exactly. And then yung isang kasama namin is naubos niya na yung mouthwash niya. So malaki yung Listerine bottle niya. Nagkataon, dahil nga nandun kami sa isang deployment site, wala kaming panghugas ng plato. So bumili ng dishwashing liquid na kulay blue. So Joy Antibac, if I remember it right. So ang ginawa, nakita yung Listerine bottle na wala ng laman, nilagay yung Joy Antibac doon sa loob at nilagyan ng tubig. So, dahil hindi naman siya naalog at konti lang naman yung naihan, pag tinignan mo siya, mukha talaga siyang Listerine. So, cut the story short, the following morning, madaling araw, dahil wala nga masyadong ilaw, yung isang sa mga boss namin, naghahanap ng mouthwash. So, ang ending, ang na-mouthwash niya, yung Joy. So, point in the story is, we're supposed to use the appropriate containers. Kung ano yung dapat niyang lalagyan, saan niyang lalagyan. And dapat pumunta tayo dun sa next kong recommendation, which is always read the label. Not just read the label, but put a label. So, importante po ang labels sa mga chemicals. Kung sa relationship po ay importante ang label, mas lalo po siyang importante pagdating sa chemical safety, no? When you're working in a laboratory in the context of a workplace, kailangan lahat ng substances that you are using are properly labeled and are using the right storage. At pag nasa bahay naman po, just in case na talagang habit natin na mag-recycle ng mga containers, wala naman pong problema, but they have to be properly labeled and appropriate yung container. So, many of us, hindi natin actually habit na magbasa ng mga packaging inlets na nakikita natin sa common chemicals or even products, no? If I would ask you, how many among of you na nagkaroon ng, for example, ng laptop or a new gadget or a new device na nauna yung binasa yung packaging inlet or instructions. Ngayon kasi medyo techy na so hindi na siya masyadong common. But way back, normally lahat ng mga devices and lahat ng mga materials or appliances for that matter, meron yung manual. Ang nangyayari, kukuting-tingin muna yung appliance or kukuting-tingin muna yung device pagka hindi mapagana, saka babalik sa manual, which is mali. Because you're supposed to read the manual, you're supposed to read the labels before actually using the equipment or using the device. So, a very, very important rule in chemical safety is always read the label. Do not mess with a chemical that you have not read its certain restrictions, its use, its precautionary measures, because the label will help you and guide you to effectively use it, no? May mga chemicals na nakalagay na do not mix with acid, do not mix with this and that, and it's impossible to, there's no one size fits all pagdating sa safety, but hindi ko kayang sagutin kung ano yung hindi pwedeng isama sa ganitong chemical and that it's not my expertise, but what I can tell is reading the label will help you a lot, and do not try to do something other than what the substance is intended for. So kung ano yung purpose niya, dun mo siya gamitin. No? Do not try to be a chemist and just be playful and do this and that, because it can cause harm to you and to harm to the people around you. So this tip leads to my next guideline or my next tip, which is also very, very important, because if you read the label, you will be able to address knowing what is the first aid, because commonly our household chemicals indicates the type of first aid that can be done. So how many of you have actually grabbed a canister of Baygon and read kung ano yung nakalagay na first instructions, kasi it's a requirement na dapat indicated yun doon. So you will find these things in most of the household chemicals. If ingested or if it's swallowed, if in contact with your skin, nakalagay po yun doon. If in instances na hindi siya indicated, then seek immediate medical attention. So hindi siya as kasing widely used as it is in the States, but maybe over the years, we have to practice calling 911 because it works. 911 is an established hotline under the same department of which my office is under, the Department of Interior and Local Government. And there are actually people 24/7 manning the 911 hotline for instances of emergencies like this. So like I said, know your first aid by reading the label, and if it's not somehow included or not indicated in the label, then seek medical attention. In the industries or in the workplace, if you're dealing with the substances at work, more often than not, merong mga safety officers na designated and chemical specialists just in case you're dealing in a job that includes manufacturing, let's say, medicines or manufacturing household chemicals. So merong in place na system that will help you have first aid to that situation. But when in doubt, seek immediate medical attention. You can call 911. So next is keeping away from children or from people who should not have access to it. So another important guideline in chemical safety is let's talk sa bahay is keeping children away from these chemicals. No, how many cases have we heard over the news na yung mga bata pinaglaruan yung ganito, pinaglaruan yung ganyan, it would cause them harm, nakalunok ng ganito, nakalunok ng ganyan. So as adults, we are supposed to be looking out for our younger brother or younger sister or from the elderly members of the family na might be challenged or vulnerable na pwede nilang mapaglaruan or pwede nilang mapagkamalan into something else, this chemical. So we have to make sure that we keep children away from these chemicals. And in the context of workplace, people who are not supposed to have access to these chemicals in the workplace shouldn't have access to it. No, so there are, like I mentioned, occupational safety guidelines for certain jobs na nagdi-deal with chemicals, or if you're using this at workplace, para people who are using it are the only ones who have access to it. So this is to ensure the layer not only of safety but security pagdating sa paggamit nitong mga chemicals na to. So again, the bottom line for this tip is people who are not supposed to have access to whatever substance or chemical that is or hazardous material shouldn't have access to it. So we now go to the last part of my session, or the last tip that I can share to you. The most important reminder is to know what you are doing. Never pretend you know something that you don't. So when we're dealing with hazardous materials, both in our home and at our workplace, we have to know what we are doing, and we would be guided by using the right PPE, by reading the label, by knowing the first aid, and ensuring that people who should have access, and those who doesn't. So we have to make sure that we know the guidelines kung ano man yung pinapatupad, whatever is in place in the workplace that we are at sa bahay. We are responsible enough to ensure na napapangalagaan yung ating mga chikiting, yung mga ating mga pamangkin, kapatid, anak, na pwedeng ma-expose sa mga substances na to. And then at the end of the day, never be afraid to ask, especially at the workplace. Kung you are in doubt into handling a certain chemical, for example, if you're working in an industry, never be afraid to ask. It's always important to uphold ang golden rule ng ating chemical safety, or for this session, is safety first. So I hope I was able to impart to you a basic information about hazardous materials, who in our country, who among our government is responsible for responses like this, and basic tips that I know you already know, but perhaps you just needed to do some kind of refreshing or reminding you of the things that I believe you already know. And that's it from me. So I hope you learned something from me today. And if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. If I don't have an answer, I will find an answer and get back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fire Inspector Gladys, for a very practical insights and inputs on how to manage hazardous materials on either in our homes, schools, or workplaces. Indeed, we learn so much from your sharing and discussion. Indeed, let us equip ourselves with necessary information, especially valuing the concept of safety first. Hence, we need to read labels, follow instructions and safety guidelines, and of course, don't be afraid to ask to assure everyone's safety. And here we end another Tradition Knows offering this morning. You can send us your questions and clarification via sac@tua.edu.ph so that we can send it to Ma'am Gladys to send appropriate information regarding your queries. Please stay tuned for more learning insights and key discussion inputs by following our Student Affairs Center Facebook and YouTube pages. You can get a certificate by answering the evaluation link posted in our social media accounts. Thank you very much, and may God bless you and your family always.